All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into this material on Facade. That's F-A-C-H-A-D-E.
Right.
And I know this is something you're particularly interested in because, well, we've talked a lot about, ways to grasp important knowledge very quickly.
Efficiency.
Yeah, efficiency.
Yeah.
So I thought that this would be right up your alley. The core idea behind a facade is basically just to make complicated things a lot easier to use without necessarily needing to know like all the inner workings of it.
Exactly. I think of it kind of as like putting a nice little simple front end on top of something that's very complex underneath.
Okay. So let's dive into some examples here.
Okay.
One of the examples in the material was talking about a travel operator who is trying to book a complete tourist package for someone.
Right.
So that would involve like the hotel, the flights, and the package itself. And the material was saying without a facade in place, the operator would have to directly interact with like the hotel booking system, the airline reservation system,
right,
and then their own like package management system.
So 3 separate things.
3 separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially even more. I mean, it depends how they're doing it right.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a lot of different systems.
Okay, so that sounds complicated.
Yeah.
Now the second example that was given was something that you actually might experience in your own life, which is checking into a hotel.
Okay.
And, you get there and the receptionist needs to know if a room is free, if it's been cleaned,
Yeah.
and if it has fresh linens. And apparently that could involve checking like several different systems.
It could, yeah. There could be like a database for the room availability, maybe a log for like cleaning and maintenance, and then potentially a separate inventory management system for, things like the linens.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does this facade like simplify this whole process?
Yeah. So the facade essentially acts as like the single interface, right? So instead of having to interact with all those different systems separately,
Okay.
you would interact with the facade, and then the facade would handle the communication with those different systems behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like in the case of the travel operator,
Yeah.
they would just have like a facade module that would handle booking the hotel, booking the flights,
Right.
and then putting together the package.
Exactly. And the operator wouldn't need to know anything about how those individual systems work.
Okay.
They would just interact with the facade.
Gotcha.
And the same thing at the hotel, right? Like the receptionist, they would have a facade for like hotel management.
Yeah.
And they could just use that to check everything they need. The room availability, the cleaning status,
Yeah.
the linens all in one place.
I thought there was like a really great analogy in the material for this.
Okay.
So picture ordering a pizza, right?
All right.
So you want to order a pizza, a custom pizza. You don't call up the company that makes the dough. You don't call up the sauce company. You don't call up the cheese factory.
Right.
You call the pizza place.
You call the pizza place.
And that's the facade.
Exactly.
They handle like all that.
Why that for me?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Now the source material mentions these things called framework classes and a facade class. What are those?
So I think in the context of our pizza analogy, the framework classes would be like the individual components of the pizza.
Okay.
Right. So you got the dough, the sauce, the cheese, the toppings.
Yeah.
And then the facade class is like the pizza place itself.
Right.
So it's the thing that you actually interact with.
Okay.
And the facade class contains all the methods that you would use to like order a pizza.
Okay.
So like if you were to say, I want to order a pepperoni pizza.
Yeah.
That would be like calling a method in the facade class.
Okay.
And then that method would handle all the complexity of actually assembling the pizza with all the different ingredients.
So essentially the big takeaway for our listener here is that a facade makes interacting with these complicated systems
much easier.
Yeah. And so like, you don't have to be an expert in airline booking protocols to book a trip.
Exactly.
You don't have to be expert in hotel inventory management to check into a hotel.
Exactly. And you don't have to know how the pizza place makes their dough.
Yeah.
All you need to know is how to order the pizza.
Yeah. And this isn't just like abstract theory.
Right.
The source material mentions that these facades are actually used in open source frameworks.
Right. So like if you're using, a popular software tool or library, chances are you're interacting with a facade at some point.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier for you to use that tool
without
having to understand all the complex code that's going on behind the scenes.
Okay. Now there was one thing mentioned briefly in the material that I kind of wanted to touch on.
Sure.
And that was the connection to this singleton pattern.
Yeah. So the singleton pattern is basically a design pattern that ensures that there's only one instance of a particular class.
Okay.
So like in our pizza analogy,
Yeah.
it would be like if the pizza place only had one central order desk that handled all the orders for the entire kitchen.
So how does that relate to the facade?
So the facade itself can be implemented as a singleton if that's appropriate for the situation. So basically it means that there's only one point of access to that underlying complex system.
Gotcha.
So everything has to go through that one facade.
So for you, the listener,
yeah,
why should you care about any of this?
I think the big thing is that understanding this concept of a facade can help you recognize when a system is designed to be user-friendly.
Okay.
By hiding that underlying complexity. Yeah.
And it's a valuable principle, not just in software, but in all sorts of areas of life.
Like when you're trying to grasp a new idea very quickly.
Exactly.
Like give you the high level. I don't need to know that symbols. Yeah. So it kind of makes you think like, where else in your life or your work could this facade approach be helpful?
It's a good question to think about.
It is. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.